At this time, we are 30 minutes into the session today, August 11th, 2025. And so far, we are getting a bounce out of the higher time frame, our C2 time frame, which is currently on MMB2. So after we saw the start of the session, we had an initial bearish momentum here, which put this candle right here on the C2 below the EMAs, but we have the buyers come in and push the price higher, and right now we had this accumulation MMB validated, and we are currently building a new bullish cycle into the validation. So we are currently gonna start to follow that one. We're gonna start by drawing the containment line. We are getting close to the 20 EMA. We were looking maybe for a deeper flush here, but in this case that did not happen, and we got a reaction right out of the 20 into the high of that flush. So we're gonna start following price from here to see if the bullish move is gonna continue. We are close to all-time highs, so we're gonna follow that in case price wants to run today during the session for those all-time highs. So at this point we are following the flush here on the validation into the 20 as part of MMB1. So we're gonna take a look if this one wants to go from here or if it's just gonna fail.
So just keeping an eye on the markets here, seeing some strength in the dollar, the Dixie up spot 3% now. And no news catalyst for this leg to the upside here, just keeping our eyes on the wires nonetheless.
So if we take a look at the context, we made this move here to the upside, had this accumulation MB validated, but now we are flushing back into the EMAs. So we have to wait to see if there's going to be some sort of reaction coming out of here on the EMAs, which would translate somehow into some sort of accumulation on our validation time frame into new momentum MBs that we would be able to follow. So right now we're getting some reaction from this EMAs. Now we have to see and wait if there's going to be some build up here of a new momentum cycle to the upside. So right now we're following this MMB1 on the validation. It just made a bounce from the 20. It's getting once again below the EMAs here, so we're gonna wait. This is a double MB. So the original double MB I was looking at was this one here. MMB1 into MMB2. Then it went a little bit deeper. Now I was taking a look at this kind of inside or internal MMB, which was not validated, and now price is flushing deeper into the 20 EMA. This is what it looks like. So we adjust the containment line at this time, and we follow up from here to see if there would be a reaction to the upside. We've come very close to the 20. So this is where we are. Now we have to wait to see if there's going to be some sort of double MB buildup out of this. This would be a double MB. We are above the containment line and above rising MAs. So let's wait to see if price could give us some reaction from there to go to the upside. At least to this point here, which could be the validation of that MMB1 that we have drawn. If price fails and wants to test here the 20, that would be some sort of compromise for us, because that's right just above the 20. So that could, I'm just gonna move my stop around here. Okay, and that was stop. Wow, that was unfortunate. So far into the session, we have seen basically price come up to the overnight high at this point here. So probably at this time we can look at this flush that is currently happening on the C time frame as an MMB1 on the 10-minute. So we're gonna just put a label on that one. And as part of this bullish run that we saw here this morning after market open, this is basically what we had on the validation time frame. We had a distribution coming into a possible MMB that failed here. Then it distributed, came one more time above the high here, and kind of made an MMB here. You could say maybe this was an MMB1 or just a failure for a new accumulation into a new cycle. So actually that's what we considered at that time, into an MMB1 here, then into an MMB2, and this MMB2 actually is something that we followed. So this is one of the, let's see here, one of the trades we took out of this containment line here. And at that time we considered an MMB1 into an MMB2, and from this one here I was looking at an internal MB here, which was built around here. And we had a double MB build up there inside this MB2. So that was the trade that I took as a long on the buy stop of that high. So we got in there. With a stop loss at this point. So we were protecting the lows, the EMAs. So that was our stop. And we went up to 1R before that one came back to break even. And from that point, we saw price coming once again back to the EMAs. Had some reaction from there, but then came back to the EMAs. And at this time we are looking at price falling below the EMAs on the validation time frame. So we're gonna be looking at a possible flush here, a deeper one actually, on the MMB1. We have to see if if we could get some accumulation out of here based on the bounce of the 5 on the context, or if we're gonna see price flush a little bit deeper into the 10 or the 20 for the startup of a new bullish cycle on the validation out of this bounces, either the 10 or the 20. So that's basically what we will be looking into the rest of the session. So we're following up on this bullish cycle. This is MMB2, and now we're flushing into the 10 EMA. So we're taking a look here for a possible entry on a double B buy stop. So we came down below the 10 EMA. We adjusted here the containment line. So at this point we were looking for an entry around this area here, but we had a strong push to the upside here. So the first opportunity for entry was at this point here. But I did not like the fact that this was kind of a strong move here. So for me, this was probably gonna make some sort of retracement before moving. So I decided to pass on that entry. Now we have to see if this is gonna just go for the validation of this MMB2, which is this high here, or if it's gonna flush deeper and test here the 20 EMA on the validation. If so, that could provide a new entry opportunity. So we're at the test of the 20 at this time. I drew an internal containment line here from this high to this low, which is located at the 20 EMA on the V. Now we should see buyers come in and push price higher, and the buildup of a double MB for the possibility of an entry. So this candle barely closed below the EMA. Now we should see a move higher as buyers should come in right away. So now I'm placing a buy stop at this point. This is based on the internal containment line that I drew. I hope to see at least a move from here to the containment line, the original one. If we fail above this low, then we're probably failing on the whole move. So there's buyers coming in. Now let's see if the move is sustained to the upside. We are at the containment line, the original one. And that's failing right now. I should have closed around this area here, as this is probably gonna fail, as there is certainly sellers coming in. This is kind of the last chance that we have to see buyers come in at this point out of the 20 EMA and push price higher. This should be the last chance here on this move before it fails. It's still valid, but we need to see buyers coming in right now. Let's see if we can push higher. Buyers seem to come in. Gonna close. So as we're getting close to the end of today's session, I'd like to, before we end up the session, to make a quick review of all the action that happened right after the open and of any available entries that were given that we may have missed. So to get started, we were at this point here around or right before the market opened. So right around this point here on our context time frame, we had a price below the EMAs. So we labeled this high here as accumulation MB, and we were just expecting this high to get a candle close above it to make this accumulation and MB validated to start watching into our validation time frame. So this happened right around this time here. So market open around here. We had some sellers coming in. Then we had a bounce. So that's basically this week here on the 10-minute time frame. We came here. So we closed around here above the accumulation MB, validating it. And then we had this move with a candle close, a strong bearish candle close below the EMAs. And after that, we had the continuation up. So for me, actually, this was some sort of reset here. And then we had a move to the upside and another flush with candle close below the EMAs. So at that time, what I was considering is that this was gonna be some sort of distribution NB, and at that time I was looking at this here, this high, as an MMB1. So this is the time when I started looking at possible entries for a buy, as I was enabled to the fact that we had this move above the accumulation, and now this was kind of going through a bullish cycle, and this was actually the first opportunity with one flush out of MMB1. So let's go and take a look at how that presented on the entry time frame. So this was around this time here. So at this point we had this flush. This was the containment line at that time. So if we made some sort of adjustment of this containment line from here throughout all this action, so kind of containing all this action here, coming down below, at this point it's important to consider that we had a significant amount of this candle closing below the EMA, so that I believe was enough reason for me to stay out. So this entry over here, that's something that I did not consider, even though it would have been above the containment line and above rising EMAs. But due to the fact that we had this bearish candle close in this amount below the EMAs, so my entry would have been right at the 20 coming from below. So this is one sort of entry that I normally avoid. So this is one that I did not take. So there was nothing in this case for me to take at that point due to that sort of price action. Then we had this move to the upside. So at that point, as I saw this, then I stopped considering this MMB1. So for me, that was once again a distribution MB. And as I saw price going higher and flushing here, then I started following this one here as a flush of an MMB1, which is right here. So this was the containment line. And at that point, I considered actually this entry here through this double MB. So that was sort of my entry. And in this case, this was a long out of the buy stop there with that risk there. So I got tapped in right here, basically went almost immediately into drawdown. At this time I was kind of looking if that was a 50% drawdown. I believe this was, but actually price never came or never tapped me out of break even, so this continued, and then price just went lower. I was at that time, I remember figuring out that I probably would be taken out due to the fact that my stop was right here, right at the EMA. So this is actually what happened. Price came down, wicked me out, and then made its move. So it was kind of unfortunate for me at the time, because then we had a nice move. This would have been actually a break-even trade for me. I would not have monetized any of this move afterwards, but I ended up having a -1 here starting the day due to this move. So this one was valid. I actually thought we were gonna have the bounce from here to the upside, but we had another kind of continuation of this flush inside MMB1 to retest the 20 in this case, and then moved from there. So was a valid setup, but that one was a -1. So I'm gonna just write that one down here. So this was -1, and I'm gonna write it down here as well. So that was the first trade of the day. Then we continued here to to the upside from that point. Then this was gonna be MMB2. At this point I saw this high here, so that was the overnight high. So I just draw that line there to consider that we were gonna probably, due to the fact that this bullish cycle was just starting, that we were gonna go to go over that high. So I just continued watching price, and as it came to this high, then I started following it. I came down here, but as this was, yeah, this was a touch of the 20. So let's take a look at that one to see if there was any sort of opportunity from there. So we had some sort of this flush into the 20 right here. So maybe around this area here, that this could have led into some sort of entry. Honestly, I do not like this sort of setup, as price came down here below the EMAs, and the EMAs were kind of going sideways, not rising. So I skipped this one. And then after that, I saw at this point price once again come up, not still validating MMB2 on the validation, then flushing once again with a much more clearer flush right here, coming into the 20, and there was this double MB, and MMB2 had an inside double MB here. So what I did at that point, I initially had a buy stop here, but as I saw this MB2 price coming below, then I started following this one to look for an internal double MB, and this is what happened here. So I got in at this point. So this was a move out of MMB2 and looking to go above this high here. In this case, we had a move for about 1 RR, and then we came back to break even, as we can see here. So this was a break even trade. At some point we could argue that this was kind of a bigger stop loss than we could have used. In this case, this is another stop loss that could have been valid, and this one would have led to a 2R move, but in anyways, this would have also come back to break even before any parcel. So no difference from the final result that we got here as a as a break even trade. So I'm going to put this one there, and this one is here as well. So that was a break even trade. Then after that, we saw price falling, kind of reclaiming here a bit the EMAs, but then just going sideways. And then from there we had a flush as part of MMB1 on the context that came to the 20s and a little bit below the 20s. So all of this time was sidelines for us. So there was nothing there. I have something marked down here, so we're gonna take a look around this area, 915. So let's go there, 915. This is this point here. So at this time we had the flush out of the context time frame below the EMAs, and basically from there we had a failure of the cycle on the context. Then we had some sort of distribution accumulation buildup into an MMB1. That's what we're looking at here. And then I went into this one within this flush that came into the 5. So actually this ended up being a loss, and there are two mistakes from my side that we are gonna discuss at this point. The first one was the double MB I took here I'm gonna just place the trade at that point. So with a point 2, 1. Yeah. So, no, with a 1 contract size. Or with a 2, I believe. Yeah, in this case, due to the fact that the stop was this size, I believe. No, it was the right size. So let me just draw this. This was the setup that I had at that point. And what were my mistakes? The first one was that this one was against my rules due to the fact that we did not get any true touch of the 20. This just came down into the 5, or I mean of the 10. We came into the 5 and never reached the 10 EMA, even though I decided to go ahead and look for this entry through this double MB, which is in this case this build-up is valid in terms of the containment line and the double MB and the entry above the containment line and rising MAs. But due to the fact that we did not actually touch the 10, that was one violation of my rules. The other one, which is most relevant in this case, and the reason why I believe that this one failed, is because on the context we went down the EMAs here, so we had a failure of the cycle, and we had actually to wait here for a buildup of an accumulation MB before looking into any construction or buildup of a new bullish cycle on the validation. So here, all of this happened around this point here on the context, so there was no accumulation at that time. This was just part of the flush, and I did not give enough time for this to build an accumulation MB. So this was my main mistake here. I took it because I saw price going above the EMA, so we were at this time when we saw this high here, this MMB 1 being built, and when I saw the flush, we came around this area here, still above the EMA, so we never came below, and then we had the entry. But to be again fully honest, this wasn't the best setup because of that. So this one here ended up being a break, so being a loss. And actually, in terms of management, we had a rundown with over 50% drawdown. Then we came to break even, so I could have gone out of this here, did not, came back. Once again, I had a little bit of opportunity to get out for a minor loss inside a setup that was not actually the best. There was still a chance for price to flush into the 20, so this would have taken me out, and this is what happened. So at the end, I missed the chance to get out here for a break even or a minor loss and let it run for a full stop here at a -1. So there were actually 3 mistakes here from my side. One in terms of not following my rules, in terms of taking the trade without having touched the 10. The other one was basically not taking into account that we were here as part of a failure on the MMB, and I did not wait for this to start or have price below an accumulation MB. That was, I believe, the most relevant. And the third one was in terms of management. So I should have been able to cut my loss here at break even or at a minor loss, and I basically let it go and run all the way down to the 20, just expecting this one to bounce here, but instead we had a full failure. So this one was a -1 that we had at that point. So I'm gonna just write it down as well here. So that was the third loss into the day. So after that, we saw price failing on the validation. This was all here. And then we had a move. In this case, now I placed a label here with this high as an accumulation MB on the context. And then we saw the buildup of a bullish cycle here through an accumulation MB that went into an MMB1. In this case, we already were above the accumulation MB, so that enables us to go and look into possible entries. And at that point, when I saw a flush here from this high to the 20, this is something that we were allowed to follow. So let's take a look if there was some sort of setup there. So this is at this point here. We had this flush. And as we came into the 20, we had this MMB1 into MMB2, maybe around here. And then price stayed inside MMB2 for a while. And we had some sort of entry opportunity at that point. So let's take a look at how that would have presented itself. So if we use a 1 contract stop loss, this is how it would have looked like. And I believe this is maybe that's too much, but due to the fact that we were getting in at this point with a chance to still flush into the 20, I believe this is an acceptable setup. So at this point, we would have been tapped in at this point out of this buy stop of double MB, and from there we went here into this point. At this time, after this high, we would place our stop loss to break even, and from there we went up into full TP, into the 3R TP at this candle here. So this one would have given us the opportunity to get a full TP trade. So I'm gonna just write this one down for a +3 out of this move here. Once again, with context time frame aligned, as we had a candle close above this high, confirming the accumulation, and then this MMB1 into the 20 with a proper containment line, a proper double MB build-up, and a proper entry that just went into our profit. Then from there we had an aggressive move into what we labeled at that time as an MMB2 on the validation. And if we start following that one, we had a flush here into the 20 around this point. There was some sort of double MB here that never got validated, so we kept on watching that. We came to this point here. So let's see if there could have been any to this point. Yeah, maybe here we could say this could have been some sort of entry. Let's place this one here with a buy stop. Let's take a look. Let's take a quick look here. Oh, this one went down. Yeah, I was looking at this double MB, but actually we had this candle close, or this week below this low here. So at that point, I would have adjusted this containment line to this, and there was no chance to get in at here, as there was no pause until this point here, which at that point was kind of extended for me, so I did not consider this one. Instead, I saw then a new flush coming, so I draw this containment line here, which is this one right here. Price came into the 20, and then we had this we had this double MB, and the tap in was right above the containment line, above rising MAs. And this one actually ended up being a break-even trade, as we went into over 50% drawdown and then came back. So this one actually would have been a new break-even trade. So I'm gonna write down here as well another BE. So we are around this area here, and from there we had basically, after that break-even, price kept on moving around the MAs and failing in this case below the EMAs, and from there we saw price go through the 20 on the context, closing below. At that point we still were on the C2 time frame above the EMAs and waiting for a reaction out of maybe the 20 EMA, which was around this area here, yeah. So this is the reason that I was not looking into sales at that point. Now let's make a mark on this candle here. Let's see this, not this one. This one, then this one. Yeah, I would say around this candle. So I'm gonna flip the chart at this time to see what was going on in terms of bearishness coming in. So this is the candle where I would have probably started looking for sales around 11:30. So I had markings here made on the chart on my validation. In terms of just the validation time frame we had here, I'm gonna just label this one here as a distribution MB right here, which came up into MMB1, and then we had, I believe this is part of the same move, but then we had MMB2 right here. So at that time we were still below the EMAs here. So in terms of C2 there was no alignment, but in terms of the context time frame, we could say that there was a validation of a distribution MB around this area here. So with a candle close above this high, which was here, we would have been enabled or allowed to look for possible sales. Again, not with true alignment with our C2, as price was still below the EMAs, but this was kind of allowed in terms at least to an EVC alignment. So if we take a look at those flushes there that I have on the charts, let's go and take a look. This one here is the flush that came from this high to this low on the 20, and we had actually you could say a double MB entry through this high here that could have led into a nice entry from here and above. Never came down to entry point, I believe, until here. So let's just take a look. Short position from this high here happen on that candle with a 1 contract risk. We're talking about that placement of a stop loss, which is below the EMA, so that's fine. B1 and B2. And from there we went up for sure, yeah, into 3R there. So this would have been a +3 at this point with this candle. That would have led to a +3 trade. But I'm just not gonna write it down here due to the fact that we were, again, not fully aligned with the C2. So I'm just gonna put it here just to see what was possible in terms of price being above a distribution MB on the context and on a MMB2 flush on the validation. So this was possible. And then after that, we had another flush out of what I still consider MMB2, which was from this area here. So let's take a look at this. We had the flush and we had the buildup of MMB1 into MMB2. So a buy stop above this high would have given us an entry, and this one would have resulted into a break even, as we had some sort of drawdown bigger than the 50% of it. So this would have, the 2-hour rules would have been completed as a break-even one. So I'm gonna write it down, or maybe not even consider that because of where we are. So I'm gonna just put it here, but I'm gonna not gonna consider it to our daily as our official daily result, due to the fact that we were not still here validated on the C2 or aligned with on the C2. So after that, we saw price go higher. So let's keep on labeling here on the V, MMB1, MMB2. After that, we had here some sort of MMB3. So let's take a look at that one. At this point, we certainly were above the EMAs on the C. We could maybe argue that this high here could be considered as our distribution MB, and that one would have been validated with this candle. So around here, maybe. So we were, I'm not sure if this one was validated or not, but we were certainly having a candle close above. So this would have been enough for me to start looking into sales based on the EVC that we use. So at this point, we are here on our context above the distribution MB and above rising MA. So when I saw this flush here from this high to the 20, this is where I would have looked into possible entries. This is the containment line there from this high to this low touching the 20. And at this time, there was certainly this double MB. So from here, we had MMB1 and then we had MMB2. And this one got validated at this point right here. So with a stop loss, let's see, of one contract right there, we are fully protecting the MMB and the MA, so that was fully valid. And from there, we let's take a look at this one. Let's use this tool here to see if this was or not a 50%. So we did not came into the 50% drawdown. We came here up to this point, and from there we came above the entry point. So this one was allowed to keep on as an open trade. Then we had above this high here, we moved the stop to break even, and from there we went, let's see, up into a full TP. Let's see, I believe right with this week over here, that would have led us to a full 3R. So this was another +3 that we would have been able to get right there as a sell. And after that we continued the move. We came to this point at this time of day, at this point, or yeah, this point of the cycle. This would have been MMB4. So we would be starting to look for a possible reset on that flush. So this is around this area. We came into the 20. This was kind of the containment line. We came to this point, so no validation around here. We came around this point here. This was a double MB, MB1, MB2, so this here would have been a tapped in, and I believe into a loss if we consider this one as an entry. So out of this, with a 1R, so we got a tap in into drawdown, once again above, and directly into our stop loss of this one. In case we would have taken that one, that would have been a -1 through this area here. And from there, basically we had failure of that bullish cycle or reset, and then price building some sort of accumulation, validating that with this candle and a distribution, sorry, then going up, then here through the 20, and just back and forth action here. Then at this point here, we can also say that this distribution MB went here for some sort of flush into the 5 as an MMB1 on the context time frame, and from there continued the bearish move. So around this area here, we came down. We labeled this one here at this point after coming on the C, coming to the 5 once again, having a reaction from there. We had here some sort of distribution MB, and as soon this one gets above, I labeled this flush here as a possible MMB1. So that was around this area here. When we had this flush from this high to the 20, and at that point we had the buildup of a double MB through MMB1 into MMB2, with a buy stop above the MMB2 high. And this one would have ended up being a break even as well, as we had a move come back for over 50% drawdown and back into the entry point. This one continued the move into the expected direction, but due to our break-even rule, this one would have just provided a break-even one. So at that point, the bearish cycle continued. This was some sort of pause that we have here, maybe as part of an MMB2. Let's go and take a look at that one. Just a bit more around here. So we had this containment line from this high, kind of through this, as we had this week below this one. So I adjust the containment line, and from there we had MMB1 into maybe here MMB2. So yeah, not the kind of setups that I like, due to the fact that for me this was kind of high here to consider an entry. But should have we done that? Let's take a look at this here with a one contract. Let's take a look. So that would be our tap in around maybe that point, or that point, I would say. We came into over 50% drawdown and then into this point as a break even. So this, I'm just not gonna write down because I don't like the setup, but this one would have also been a break even trade. So, and after that, price went up, validated the MMB2, and then basically had a strong bearish move into what at that point seemed to be MMB3, but then failed below it. And this is where we are, basically at the end of the session. So let's just take a look at this. This would have provided a total gain of, let's see, this is -1, -1, and -1, 3 -1s. And then we had a +3 and another +3, and then break even. So basically a +3 overall for the session. So this is what we had throughout the session today.